Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk Food Safety with Tia and Jill. Today
Well,
we are celebrating.
you're celebrating, and we're so glad you're here to celebrate with us.
Yes. So we want to know who's celebrating with us. So please put your name in. Well, I guess you don't have to put your name. Your name's going to show up on our comments, but put where you are listening from. And then, let us know, what are you celebrating in your life?
hmm And even if you don't have something like in particular, like what can you celebrate even today?
Mm-hmm.
Like what can you look at and be like, hey, today this is something that is worth celebrating because why not?
Yes.
And if you're wondering why we're so into it, of course, our whole show is going to be about the power of celebration and the impact
Mm-hmm.
it has for us and for our teams.
Yes. And we are celebrating because we have been together as this dynamic duo for a
Mhm.
year.
1 year. Can you believe it's been a year?
No, I can't. I cannot believe it's been a year. I cannot believe it's been, almost a year that we've been doing Real Talk,
Mhm.
right? Like all of these things, I just remember us just talking about and thinking about what we want to put out, right, into the industry, into the universe. And I mean, we've done so much over this year that I'm super proud of, and I'm looking forward to year two. And so we're like in the celebration mood. We actually should have brought like maybe our champagne or
We'll
something.
do we'll do that next week. So stay tuned. If you're with us this week, then stay tuned for next week too, because there'll be
Yeah, there
more.
you go. I love it. I love it. So yes. Hello, Wendy. Hello, welcome. Hi, Nikita. Thank you very
Hello.
much.
Thank you.
We
Nikki,
are
always good to see
super, we're
you.
super excited.
We are, because right when we started, like we knew coaching and our programs were like the next thing.
Hmm.
And they're still kind of on the cusp, right? People are still getting used to it, but it's been amazing to see people embrace and say, wow, okay,
Yeah.
there's a new way, there's a better way, there's something different that we can do that really focuses on like whole self
Yes.
well-being.
Yes. And
And you know,
we've
we're
seen.
people are still like understanding, like what is it? I shouldn't say people are understanding, but it's that transition into something new. And so there's always
Yeah.
those who are kind of on the leading edge and then those that are really curious. And so we're always curious where you're at on that scale of
Yeah.
the world.
And, I think we've seen some light bulbs over this year,
Mhm.
right? And we see some dim lights, right? But we're so excited about the impact that we're going to make next year. And so
Mhm.
it's time to celebrate, right? And so we're in that mind. And then we're just thinking about, too, like how celebration of yourself and your accomplishments and also your team, um, your direct team, your indirect team, your counterparts, how that celebration really do help drive food safety, right? And I love the way that we talked about today on like making celebration a part of every day. And
Mhm.
people don't think about it like that, right? Like we think about, let's celebrate at the end of the year, let's celebrate at the end of the quarter, or whenever it happens to be. But really making celebration a everyday habit is something that can help drive food safety culture in your facilities or at
Mhm.
your organization.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's one of those things that once again, it's kind of a nice to have, or we believe it's nice to have. Like
Yeah.
it's nice to celebrate, but it's not like we're getting product out the door when we celebrate.
Hmm.
But I think today, hopefully by the end of our time together today, hopefully it'll give people a new perspective to go, actually, it does help get product out the door. It
Hmm.
does help firefight easier. It does help keep things on track. And here's
Yeah.
why. And I
Yeah.
think intuitively, or I should say logically, we all know this. But yet, the reinforcement to say, why is it important? And what is it that shifts in us
Yeah.
that creates this? How does celebration create kind of this sustained energy that helps us move forward from
Mhm.
the positive side versus sometimes we talk about, oh my gosh, we're such a great team and we trust each other because we've been in the trenches. We've
Yeah.
been through the fire.
Yeah.
And those bonds that are forged through fire are certainly strong.
Hmm.
But bonds that are formed through celebrating and appreciating each other are forged even stronger.
Hmm. Absolutely. So we are going to dive into all that and talk about that today.
I know. See, I'm already in it, Tia, aren't
I
I?
know.
You're like,
Well, it's
let's
my fault.
keep
I kind of
moving
also
ahead,
started.
Jill.
So you guys know we're super excited about this. But hello to Claire. Thanks for joining us today from Oklahoma City. And so, for those that are new that's listening to us, whether live on LinkedIn or on our own replays on our YouTube channel, we do want to introduce ourselves. So, we are Jill and Tia, and we are your go to resource for technical leadership development. And as Jill mentioned, our programs are based in coaching principles. And we believe that that really is the key from learning about these things, right? Training to actually execution, because coaching helps you stay on the path because it's intrinsic and it's within yourself, and it's bringing out the gifts that you already have to become a better leader for yourself, for your organization, and for your team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that self-awareness, right?
It is that self-awareness, and it's also that sourcing from within, because too often we're trying to look like the leader next door or somebody else that we've seen. And while there may be some good characteristics, it's got to be you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's
You
got to
have
be you.
to have the come from within, right?
Mhm.
And sure, those things can inspire you to be a better leader. There's some things that you can pick up on, right? But we see sustained behavior over time when it comes from within. And that's just human behavior,
It is.
right?
Yeah. And speaking of behavior, we should dive into why celebration is such an important aspect of promoting, sustaining human behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When we were talking about doing celebration, right? Thinking about celebration, appreciation, reward, and linking that to food safety culture, I feel like some people think, wait, what? Why is this linked to food safety culture at all? Like, you should do your jobs, right? Do your jobs, follow the process. Like, why do we need to celebrate every day or reward or show appreciation at a high frequency, right? In order for us to move food safety culture forward.
Well, my position on this. If we think, well, we already, you take home a paycheck, that should be celebration enough. I shouldn't have to do above and beyond. Then I would say, we may need to rethink this.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the old school thinking, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
it really is. And we're going to talk about this more with Brian on Friday, but right, that is an old way of thinking when it comes to work and how people are making contributions and want to be part. That's kind of removing people.
Right.
Celebration is about including people and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing the work that we're doing. And when we talk about food safety culture, isn't what we talk about like, how do we help support the behaviors
Yeah.
that are effective for food safety culture, for
Mm-hmm.
food safety? And so celebration is like a cornerstone to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. It is. And, there's some science behind it, right? There's science that's out there. There's studies that's been done.
There is. And I'm always amazed because whenever we look and I kind of like reconnect back to things about our actual brain chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
just the neuroplasty that we have in terms of being able to create new pathways within our brain is phenomenal. And even as we talk about celebration, it's right, we're letting off all the chemicals in our brain that help us feel good. We're
Yes.
activating our own reward center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that shows that we kind of get those feel good hormones, right? That's out there, like
Mhm.
endorphins, right?
Mhm.
Like chemically, what's happening in the brain is that these feel good hormones are coming out are happening inside of our body when we celebrate. And then that's turning into increased productivity and lower stress and
Mhm.
happiness, right? And all of that is a part of the culture behind food safety culture, right?
It is.
Because we know if we have people that is trying to follow processes and make product, right? No matter what part of the organization you're in, if you are unhappy, burnt out, overworked, sad, you're not going to be you can't put in physically, right? You cannot put in 100% even, because you are burnt, you're spent. Um, and you're sad, right? There's no happiness.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part. I think about just even the brain chemistry is recognizing that when we do this, it helps our brain wants more of that. So
Hmm.
when we help others celebrate, we celebrate them, their brain wants more. And so that in itself is what's helping us build resilience because it's telling our brain that what we just did was worthwhile. And
Yes.
that directs our brain to keep doing things that are worthwhile.
Hmm.
And you know what I love about this is some compare it to like runner's high. Well, this girl, she not running. I'm not going to run. I don't need that type of high, but I am all about let's celebrate and we can all kind of have that good feeling if we
Hmm.
don't have to put in the run.
Yeah,
If you're running, yay for you, but not me.
I know. You know what? I haven't been a runner in a while. So, no. And that what I feel like that didn't even release feel good hormones for me.
Maybe or maybe not, but I think people kind of can hopefully connect with that, right? The runner high, just that concept of like you do
Yeah.
some hard work and then like it feels good.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what we want to do here when we talk about celebration is like, how do we help people feel good about what we're doing?
Hmm. Absolutely. So, like we talked about, this is chemistry. This is
Mhm.
science, right? On what happens when you celebrate. Um, and we talked about when you celebrate, you're really focusing on the now, right?
Mhm.
Like oftentimes we look at what's the long term goal. We haven't made it yet. What are the barriers, right, to get there? And those are all great things. But when you don't take the time to celebrate or appreciate or reward, then studies show that stress is high
Yeah.
in those situations. And we all know when we're stressful, we're not at our optimal performance.
Mhm. Yeah, and when we celebrate, we can celebrate things. We don't celebrate things in the future or things from behind. We celebrate in the now.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
this moment, what are we celebrating? And I love that when we do that, it gives us that moment, like you said, to reduce stress and kind of release from the daily grind. Like, whew, we're going to celebrate instead of, focusing on the to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you think about what to put in the comments on, what are you celebrating now,
What?
right? Or what would you like to celebrate now? Even thinking about, okay, I'm on this daily grind, right? And
Mhm.
I'm stressed. How do you stop and really truly think about the progress that you've made and celebrate that? Like
Mhm.
we were talking to someone, I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was a couple of maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, they were doing some exercise and really was like, man, I hadn't realized how far we've come. Like we've talked about like, oh, we need all these things in the future, right? And we talk about it even within Catalyst, right? On like what you need in the future to continue building your teams. But there's one thing that we do as a part of our program is stop and think about, okay, look how far we've come as a group. Look how far you've come as a leader in your organization when it comes to food safety. And then that's that feel good, right?
Mhm.
That's that, um, chemistry, what's happening in your brain on like, yes, I can do this. I can continue down this path because look how far we've come from it. And
Yeah.
that in itself reduces that stress.
When I think about the times that I've had quality managers, I can think of one particular. We used to always joke because her office was like, we used to call it the therapy office. People in and out all day, sharing everything that was good and bad, usually not so great. And there were some days really where it took a toll because, right, another fire, another thing to solve.
Yeah.
And we really started to say, let's shift and like, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate that you've created these bonds that are of trust, that people are coming and they're sharing with you like what's going well. And some of it wasn't always related to food safety and quality. It was about the facility, it was about teams, it was about their personal life. But
Yeah.
celebrate that these connections are made And that this is, those are the foundations, once again, of culture in your organization. We care
Mhm.
about you as a whole person, and we
Yeah.
celebrate that you're bringing these things forward, even if it's uncovering a fire.
Right. Exactly. And I think you're also talking about, like, with reducing that stress, it's releasing happiness,
Hmm.
right, out. And we know that if we are happy, and right, if your team is happy and engaged, you're getting more from them, right? And feel they feel I'm trying to think about the word on, like, it is engaged, but like that true ownership almost of, like, this is mine and I'm happy to be a part of it and I'm happy to push this forward. And those celebrations along the way releases that.
It does. And sometimes we don't give enough credit to there are actual chemical reactions happening within our body.
Yeah.
People sense these things, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is like we all know about quorum sensing with bacteria, same type of thing. Like, yay, I know what's going on. That's the happiness. And
Yeah.
so when we think about how it's almost like contagious happiness. So
Yeah.
when we celebrate, that keeps going. And how do we keep that giddy feeling kind of the thread of within our team? Because
Yeah.
that's when we have fun together. And that's when people really can be committed to a team and knowing that we're there for the good times and the bad times, but like, let's celebrate and have happiness.
Yeah. And, like, when you think about it within your food safety culture, if you one of the things that most people complain about is that, well, people don't care, or they're unhappy at their work,
Mhm.
so they're not trying to do anything more, they're not trying to do anything different, they're not going to want to change, right? All those things are about stress and happiness.
Mhm.
And if you are reducing that stress and releasing that happiness, imagine what type of movement you can get in your food safety culture.
Yeah,
And that's just through celebrations.
it is. And I think it's really important because we're not promoting, happiness all the time. We understand as humans, we have seasons where sometimes things, right? We all know things don't always go well. And that's okay because that's what gives us the perspective of when we can really step into that happiness and release that happiness.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's almost too, like, your cup being full,
Hmm.
right? Like, as you're celebrating, you're releasing this happiness, and think about it as like a cup of happiness, right? Once something bad happens, and I know people talk about this even in relationships, right? Like, you have to feel that bank of good stuff so that if something happens
Yes.
that negatively impacts your happiness, you can spend some of that currency without feeling drained, without
Yeah.
being empty.
Yeah. Well, and that really goes to how it strengthens your team.
Hmm.
Because when you have this bank with the people on your team, right, you can have one of these days where something doesn't go well, but you've already put this in the bank.
Hmm.
And so the bonds that you already have created together are much stronger.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
It's we talk about it when it's around building relationships, right? Like, how do you build relationships?
Mhm.
If you are, and I love when you bring up the, like, we're in the trenches together. That's how we build the relationships. That doesn't always work for relationships, right?
No.
And so, like, if you build this relationship on celebration and appreciation, that bond is stronger because your bank of happiness is larger.
Well, and it goes back to those chemicals that we've released, right?
Hmm.
So when we release the endorphins and serotonins that tell us we want more of this, that's the celebration. When we're in the trenches, that's stress hormones and cortisol levels are going up. Those are the things that our brain's like, I don't want more of that.
Right.
And so while we're creating these moments of bonding because we've experienced this thing in the trenches together, that is not as sustainable as when we create the pathways that say, I want more of this.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. When I think about the strongest teams I've had, it's because we laugh, we celebrate, we reward, we appreciate one another, and we show that appreciation, right? Like, we do that often. And so when it's time to go through something hard or have a hard conversation, we know that that mutual respect there because we've laughed together, we celebrated together, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what really held our teams together, right? Like when I think about like the strongest teams that I've had, even when we were in the trenches, right? The thing that actually built the bond was not the fact that we were in the trenches together, right? It was really around the fact that we took moments to stop and sing and stop and laugh and stop and enjoy one another and celebrate what's happening in our personal lives. Like those are the things that we even remember coming out of it. Of like, oh yeah, you remember when you did that funny thing, or you made a funny song about this, or we made a video about whatever happens to be. Those are the things we remember, and those are really the things that connected us as a team. Those celebrations.
Mhm. And I think that's really important because especially when we talk about the whole great resignation,
Mm-hmm.
quiet quitting, the problems that we're seeing with retention, we know that loyalty to organizations and for people, because it goes both ways, has shifted. But I
Mm-hmm.
love what this woman, Erin, at Full Focus says that celebrating personal achievements of employees, whether they are birthdays, work anniversaries, project related, that is tangible evidence that a
Mm-hmm.
company values its employees and sees them as people worthy of celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That I like that. The company values its employees.
Mhm.
Like that's evidence of that.
And sees them worthy of celebration.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about, gosh, I'm not sure my company appreciates me, hello, celebration. Do
Right.
we let people know that they are worthy of celebration? How do
Mm-hmm.
we demonstrate that? Because, yeah, if we're not doing it here, why not? Why wouldn't somebody go somewhere else where somebody will appreciate them and
Right.
celebrate what they bring to the team?
Absolutely. And I know you guys have stories of think about the times where your team or your group or someone celebrates something but they didn't include you,
Mhm,
right? Like how did that feel versus the times that you were included?
mhm,
You are more likely to have a stronger bond. You're more likely to have more loyalty, right, to that team, to that person, to that organization that showed you and gave you that evidence that the work that you are doing, the person that you are here is worthy of celebration.
mhm. And I think even doing that to celebrate your team. So when I had stepped into the role where I was overseeing several facilities, our managers at those facilities had very seldomly gotten together. And I
Mm,
don't mean just physically in person, but even on calls to like help each other and what's going on.
wow.
Like that hadn't been fostered. And so as we kind of stepped in and started like, how do we build team? Right. Part of it was a cadence of when we got together.
Yeah.
And we started doing like 2 days meetings where we'd be together. And the last half of the second day, usually, was where we would do something completely unrelated to work. The person who was hosting, because we went around to facilities, had to plan something that we would do. So we did things like bowling. We did the wine, go to the vineyard and have pizza because they had a, outdoor oven. I remember one time we went and we played whirly ball and we actually, because we all wanted to drive together and it was a little bit of a drive,
Yeah.
like our admin even got us a limo, which sounds
Wow.
ridiculous, but it was actually cheaper than like trying to rent a van for all of us. But
That's
you know
awesome.
what? The thing that was really amazing was seeing our team be like, wow, like we're worthy enough to celebrate
Yeah.
and helping us shift that it's not about being frivolous and we're not wasting money. This is the investment in helping our people know that they are our
Mhm.
strongest assets. They are the
Yeah.
greatest ones that we have. And if we don't celebrate them, they're going somewhere else.
Yes. I mean, so just thinking about that, Jill, like how did that impact your culture of
Oh,
your team and the morale?
it was amazing because since I had been one of the direct reports in the past that had not like experienced a team
Yeah.
with them, it was really amazing to be part of that, to see people actually start to like hanging out together.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that we didn't like each other, but we didn't intentionally make time to strengthen the bonds.
Yes.
And
Yes.
of course, all of that flowed over to our work, and we were
Mhm.
more efficient in what we did. We were more aligned as a team. We were more open to calling each other and sharing and asking, and it opened doors.
Yes. And those are all the things that we must do in order to build a sustainable food safety culture, right?
Well, yeah, and that really goes into, one of the things we talked about with improving productivity.
Hmm.
And so even if it's right, I know not everybody has the ability to have people in person and things are different now,
Hmm.
but Happify had a report that came out, actually it was a couple of years ago. And they said even if you start a meeting by praising a team member's success, it can raise the performance of your whole team by 31%.
When I heard this
Uh-huh.
statistic, it blew me away. Like, this is not saying if you're praising each team member's success. This is
One team member.
one team member. If you praise one team member, the whole team performance is risen
Yeah.
by 31%.
Yeah. And let's even be a Grinch and be like, well, what if it's only half of that? 15% is
Right.
still something that's incredible. Who
Hmm.
would take 15% increased productivity?
Right. Exactly. Everyone would, especially around food safety, right? It's like these are the things. I love the conversations that we're starting to have around food safety culture because we're linking these things around happiness, celebration,
Mhm.
appreciation to food safety. And like we've been doing this for a while. And the people that's been in food safety and quality, like yourselves, we have been pushing food safety culture for a long time before it even had words, right,
Mhm.
associated with it.
Mhm.
And we've had very little progress, so much so that people feel like we will never be able to have the food safety culture that we aspire to be, right? Like
Mhm.
there's some people that believe that. We don't. We know we can get there. We just have to do it a little differently.
Mhm.
And so I like the conversations that we have on Real Talk and other people have in other spaces of how do we use what we know about people and how to increase productivity and lower stress and build loyalty and all the things we're talking about today. We already know how to do that.
Mhm.
And that's through celebration, right? How now we're having conversations around how do I take that, bring that to my team to increase productivity, to increase loyalty, to reduce stress, right? To increase happiness of my team and their well-being so that they will be more productive and they can continue to push food safety culture forward. And that people are now they're in a spot of being well, right? Like when we think about well-being, they're now in a spot so they can pick up the baton and go with it and see a different perspective and be curious, right?
Mhm.
And be able to look within themselves and say, okay, how do I continue to be engaged? How do I look at things differently? And you can't do that from a mindset of sadness or burnt out or
No.
overworked. And celebration is one way of getting there.
It is. And so Tia, I'm going to ask because not everybody is part of a team or culture where they feel that celebrations are important. So
Yeah.
what if I am the lone duck out there going, I think celebration is important. What do we do?
Yeah.
What could somebody do?
What I would say is it starts with you. You can start that spark. And so you can go out and celebrate one member in your facility.
Mhm.
You can go out and say, hey, Jill, I've been looking at complaints, and the complaints on this line has actually gone down. I know it's because of the hard work you've been doing on the line. Thank you for that. Right now, the productivity is going up 31%, right? You should see the
Right
stars,
now, right? And I'm
right?
probably like, well, thanks, but I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. And you're going to be like, no, what you're doing is making a difference.
Hmm. Yep. Keep doing it. And if you
Mhm.
see somewhere else we need to improve on, let me know because
Mhm.
what you're doing is working.
Mhm.
You can start that and pick someone new every day
Yeah.
and go up to that person and compliment them, praise them for their success, whether it's a work success or a personal success,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, I heard your boys won their hockey team.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. I'm super proud of them. I know you must be too.
Yeah.
Just that changes the chemistry in our brains. And it doesn't only help the person that you're praising, it also helps you. And it
Yeah.
also releases endorphins in your mind, so that when you go back and talk to the people that don't really care about celebration right now, it gives you that motivation. It gives you that productivity to continue pushing through those walls. And then eventually, after you've made it a point to go and talk to different people, you'll start hearing your team say, wow, I really noticed the difference in Jill.
Mm-hmm.
She's starting to bring up problems with solutions instead of just complaining.
Mm-hmm.
She stopped the line and we didn't even have to tell her to. She literally stopped the line and said, this is what I'm doing to fix it, and then started back up.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we've never seen her behave this way. And then you can take the credit and say, oh, I've noticed that too. I've actually been celebrating the things that she's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that difference too.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've influenced your team. Now you're starting to influence them to say, well, what can I do to celebrate to help people do what I need them to do?
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
And it's more likely that I'm also going to be passing that forward as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's that spark, right? Like, and that's why we say it starts with you. You can light a spark. And it's not going to happen overnight, right? Like if you are setting a fire, right, it's not going to just take off right when you strike it, right? But that spark starts something. And you must start with that spark. And it really does start with each one of us. You, everyone that's listening right now, you have the power to start that spark.
You do, and I think even if you're uncertain about like how to maybe approach someone or what to actually, celebrate, sometimes even starting with you is important.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we always hear that like any change we want to see, it needs to start with us. Things are reflected back to us.
Mm-hmm.
So what are things that we can even celebrate about ourselves?
Yes. So maybe one of those days you talk to yourself, right? Around like the successes that you have.
Like, yeah, I nailed that report. Or, woo, I did that better and faster than I have before. Or, wow, I slowed down and I really put more intentional thought and work into how this was going to work, or how I ran this meeting, or how I interacted with team members, or how I influenced, whatever it is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, 31%, just like that, right?
Yeah, because that's creating those new brain wave pathways in up here with those the chemicals and the endorphins and everything going off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even for us, it helps keeping our brain wanting to look for the evidence that tells us that when things are going well.
Absolutely. And celebrations don't have to be about what you accomplish. So that's one way. Science also tells us that giving back produces the same type of happiness, the same type of chemical reactions in your brain, just as celebrations do. So if you want to give back and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take the afternoon and volunteer, or, and hand out meals, or, holidays coming up, maybe you're going to go and you're going to wrap gifts or collect gifts. Whatever it is, science says that giving back also creates those the same type of happiness. So that's also a way to celebrate.
It is. And I just listened to one of Oprah's podcasts where she talked to the author of Tuesdays with Morrie. And it was fascinating because the one thing that stood out was that Morrie had said, giving is living. And just that kind of that reconnecting of this is what we as humans were put here to do, to give, to share, to help, support.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah. I love that. And thanks, Claire, for the note. We're not sure if LinkedIn is having some issues, but yes, we are on replay. So please come back and watch us.
Yeah, because one of the things we want to talk about is that when we talk about celebration, it's not always the same for everyone, right?
Yeah.
The things that I like aren't necessarily the things that Tia appreciates when it comes to
Right.
celebration or other people. And so I think it's really important that, right, we have these different levels and ways to do celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Never discredit that, right? We can just have a quick conversation and be like, wow, like what you did or how you're doing this, awesome. People still like to hear that.
Yes.
But there are some other ways that I think it's really important for us to consider so that we really help people connect to that. We see them in the things that they value as appreciation as well.
Yes. And that's really important because when you think about the leaps and bounds that can happen in culture, a piece of that is making sure that you celebrate and show appreciation in a way that people can receive it.
Mhm.
And so if you're thinking about, okay, I understand the benefits of celebrating, how do I really do it? And where do I start? And
Mhm.
it's really understanding how you like to be celebrated and how your team likes to be celebrated.
Mhm.
And I really love the book, the Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Probably because, I agree with them. And, it's based off of the five love languages, right? If
Mhm.
you've heard of that. And so the different ones are very similar. And so when Jill said some of it is just saying, you did great at this thing, at this
Yeah.
presentation that you did, that's words of affirmation.
Mhm.
And 46% of the workforce, according to the five language of appreciation in the workplace, 46% of the workforce, that is their way of receiving appreciation.
Mhm.
But it must be specific and it must be timely.
Mhm.
So saying just good job is not necessarily enough, but identifying the situation, the behavior, and the impact that it had, that's the piece of the words of affirmation that helps that person, if that's the way they like to receive it, say, oh, this person appreciates me. This
Mhm.
person is celebrating me and the work that I do.
Mhm. And I think that's super important because let's say it's almost like 50% of the workforce says that's my main language of
Mhm.
appreciation. It doesn't mean that others don't like it. It's just not always their preferred.
Right.
So I think that's why this one can be so powerful to at least start here.
Hmm.
Because how many times, can we even let people know, like, thank you for being here today? Right.
Yeah.
I know it's really a tough time, but you are like, you're like the bedrock, and we know that we're going to be able to get product out, and we really appreciate that you're here.
Yes. Yes. And that has cost you nothing
Yep.
but time.
And for someone, they're like, I just showed up. Yes. But in a time where we have people who we're having a hard time getting people, and we
Hmm.
have people who we always joke about, right? We start in the morning, they go out at lunch, and we never see them again.
Right.
We need to recognize our team, how do we help our team members know, the ones that are showing up every day,
Hmm.
that really does matter.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the second one is quality time. This is the next largest group. It's about 26%. And so when we think about, okay, how do we do quality time at work?
Hmm.
And it's really thinking about and creating those moments for teammates to connect,
I love that.
making sure that your check-ins are meaningful,
Hmm.
right? And so it's not just you dive in and you're going down the checklist of things and you only talk about the things that you find important.
Hmm.
Right? No, it's about how does both people benefit from this check-in? How is it meaningful on a personal level, right? Like even connecting from a personal level, but also how is it meaningful to the work that we get done? Not just your work as a leader, but also your team's work. What are the things that they need to bring up and they need to talk about and they need to connect about?
Yeah.
That's that quality time.
And I think these are the parts where we really get to also demonstrate that human connection because, right, it could be something like, hey, yesterday, I know you were really excited about X, Y, and Z. How'd that turn out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That means we're taking quality time to check on something that was important for someone else. And so
Yes.
it's meaningful. And so once again, it doesn't require a big investment. It doesn't require a lot of time, but it does require us to be thoughtful and intentional.
Hmm. Yeah, this makes me think about one of our clients, their manager set up office hours.
Mhm.
And people love that because they had the opportunity to really touch base with their manager.
Yeah.
And it's because time has gotten really busy, right? And their manager was traveling and doing other things, and they felt like their time was being moved around. Well,
Yeah.
having this dedicated office hours time, people were like, wow, this is so meaningful, and we love that. And it actually changed their mindset around things,
Mhm.
right? And it was just setting up this quality time that their manager could give them that was uninterrupted.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's so important because we often have found when I was working for leaders and for my team, right? There's so many things going on, and we want to spend more time to be able to explain what we did or ask questions about what we did or understand the bigger impact.
Hmm.
But when we're always rushed for time or that time slot we had like gets pinged around the calendar 6 times,
Yeah.
we start wondering like, do, is do, am, do I matter? Is what I'm
Right.
doing meaningful? And so something as simple as that office hours created a spot where people could step in and knew the time would be available and
Hmm.
knew we didn't have to rush. You didn't have to put it into bullet points. You don't have to summarize into 3 sentences. You can actually have a conversation. And that can
Right.
be really powerful for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And so when you're thinking about celebration and quality time, how do you really create those time moments, right? Where you and that person or the person in the team, whatever happens to be, can create this moment of celebration.
Yeah. And it could be something like I had a team member who what she liked was to actually when we did our one-on-ones go on a walk.
Yes.
So we called it our walk and talk. We would go out and walk, and then we could also be in the fresh air and we could look around. Granted, we were walking like near the plant, so it wasn't like total fresh, I mean, it was fresh air. You know what I'm saying?
It was like
Um,
by a lake or
but it was right getting us in a spot that was quality time for that team member.
yes. Yes.
Sometimes I had other team members who like I'd be like, "Hey, how about I bring us some coffee?" Or maybe we go for coffee. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think what I found is the quality time was really appreciated when we could actually remove someone from their normal workspace, especially in a plant,
Hmm.
so that they could focus, that
Yeah.
we could focus. Otherwise, there were always the distractions. We've
Hmm.
all seen the people outside the door, like knocking and wondering when
Yes.
they're going to be done. And that doesn't create an environment where you can have the high quality time that people may be looking for. So keep that
Right.
in mind as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Then the next highest one is acts of service, and that's at 22%. And ways that you could show appreciation or even to celebrate is really around that might be taking a task, right? So you
Mm.
did so well at this thing. I know it took over a lot of your time. I want you to, I want to pick this up for you or whatever it is, another task or
Mhm.
something, so that you can now focus and do whatever you would like, right? Or really celebrate your win without thinking about this other task. Or picking up a coffee, right? Or
Mhm.
providing dinner for the team. That's
Yeah.
also ways of like, okay, you don't have to pick up your coffee today. I'm going to pick up your coffee. You deserve it. You did such a great job. Those are the types of acts of service when you think about it in terms of the workplace, that some people, about 20% of people really appreciate.
Mhm. Once again, I had a quality manager who liked acts of service.
Mm,
And it was really interesting because, right, with so many things on our plate, it was as simple as sometimes something like, "Hey, how about I run this report for you? And that way then you can continue working on this."
yes.
And they were like, I mean, it was a small thing to do. And it took the pressure off of them, but also showed how much I appreciated what they were doing.
Yes. Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. The fourth one it's interesting that it's the fourth one down,
Mm.
and that's tangible gifts, and it's only 6%. And the reason that this might shock people is because when people think about celebration, they might think about like, we're gonna buy these extravagant gifts and
Gift cards, anniversary gifts, right?
exactly. But it's actually only 6%.
Mhm.
And that's of course given personal gifts, but even I like this, even the gift of time off, right? Which I think the gift of time off, I might even rank that a little higher, right?
Okay, but I think that's because we all know our work is still waiting. So is
Right.
it really
So
a
it's like,
gift if I get to do all my own work anyways?
right, exactly. But I think this is interesting because a lot of people shy away from celebration because they think that they need to invest money
Mhm.
into tangible gifts. But
Not so.
not so, right? And you can, right? And you should spend some time there, especially if there's someone on your team that values tangible gifts.
Mhm.
But chances are it might not be that high for your team. And so some of the things around words of affirmation, spending quality time, doing an acts of service, those are the higher ones that in a lot of ways is investing your time.
It is. And I had a facility where the leadership team, it was essentially, here's my story around it. It was
Yes.
cheap and easy to get t-shirts for people.
Mm,
And so they would give out t-shirts like every quarter, like hooray for this and hooray for that, which was cool. But most people are kind of like, and
I don't right. I don't need another t-shirt.
I don't need another t-shirt. And so I think, once again, on the part of for the organization to understand that celebrating is important, that was awesome.
Hmm.
But they could even move it up a notch if they would just consider, like, what are the things that people actually value when it comes to this celebration?
Right.
Some may like the t-shirt, but they could probably reinvest that money into something that would like be another appreciation language that 25% of people might value, and maybe they try something another time, because it's not that people don't like all of these, it's just we prefer them, or
Right.
we have, like, I'm going to say, I don't want to say limits, but right, like, so many tangible gifts only get us so much appreciation before
Right.
we're like, we
Exactly.
just want some, like, words of affirmation.
Right, exactly. Yes, yes. And that's a really good way of putting it, where most of us we like all of these things to some extent, but what is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck for that person,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
And then the fifth one, just because we know that there's five, is appropriate physical touch. And this is less than 1%, mainly because we don't want our coworkers touching us, right?
Hmm.
But there's some people that, are you a hugger, right?
Hmm.
Like, people are huggers, right? And that's how they show their appreciation to other people. And that's how they like to be appreciated.
And it could be high fives, it could be
And it could be a
fist
high
bumps.
five. Yeah.
Right, those
Or,
things too can be forms of celebration, but
mhm.
the other ones do rank a lot higher in terms of the number of people who prefer those.
Yes, yes. But yeah, I like the high fives, or even like the elbow bump now that
Mhm.
we've had COVID, right? Give some elbow bumps
Yeah.
in the room. And that is appropriate physical touch. Um, Assuming that you know the boundaries and respect the boundaries of people, and that you're not assuming that they like certain things. Like
Right.
they are a hugger, right? I love the conversations where it's like, are you a hugger? I'm a hugger. You might not be a hugger. And some people are like, I'm not really a hugger, but or I'm more of an elbow, or I'm more of a just a thank you, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So once you understand these pieces and how that relates to your team, right? Then the next step is like, in what channel do they want to receive it? And in what
Mhm.
channel do you want to receive it? So some people like, a wow, you did so great at that presentation on Friday. The impact was amazing, right? Some people like for you to say that during your one-on-one time. Some people would love for you to shout it from the rooftops. They would love for you to mention it in the senior leadership team. They would
Mhm.
love for you to give them a plaque. They would love for you to like put it on a banner. When some people are just like, you know what, you can just tell me the next time you see me, versus like shouting it and everyone's now looking at me and saying
Mhm.
congratulations.
Yeah.
So understanding that channel, and that doesn't mean that you should not sing the praises of your team at a frequency loud, right? But more that you understand what's going to be the biggest movement for them around celebration. Because
Mhm.
if you continue to shout it from the rooftops and they don't want you to do that, it's not going to seem like a celebration to them.
No. And I think, like you said, the most important part is understanding what works for different individuals. And so whether you have direct reports or as you're working across teams and you're collaborating, it's important for even people in different like non-direct report relationships to understand like how do you help celebrate the work that you're
Yeah.
doing. In fact, you know what I love is that for us, like we think it's so important that there's even like worksheets in our modules to help people walk through how do we do this? How
Yes.
do we have conversations with people? Because if we just say, "Hey, what's your appreciation language?" Most people are like, a lot of people may not even know.
Right.
How do we
You might
even
not even
walk
know
through this
about
with them?
yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So and because we really do truly believe that, and we talked about a lot of those points today on why celebration is so important to us as leaders, and to move food safety culture forward and to build a sustainable food safety culture.
Yeah. Culture is people.
Yes.
And so, if we aren't connecting with people, if we are not tapping into human behaviors, we won't be
Hmm.
successful at food safety culture.
Hmm.
But we also don't have to like study their behavior to say,
Right.
right? There's different ways we can do this. Celebration is one, human connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as Jill mentioned, we talk about that in our technical leader boot camp
Mhm,
and throughout our technical leader development
mhm.
programs, where as you grow in your leadership, whether it's direct leadership or indirect leadership, as you grow as a leader, um, how you celebrate your teams, how you celebrate your counterparts, how you celebrate people might look a little bit differently, um, based off of the type of influence that you need out there, but then even like what type of work your counterparts are working on, right? What
Mhm.
type of stress levels are out there, and how happy they are.
Yeah.
So
And
oh, go ahead.
well, no, as I say, it's all about like how do we help create a habit?
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, we would put out the challenge of how can you create a daily habit to celebrate?
Mm-hmm.
But even if we
Absolutely.
start with maybe I can at least celebrate, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a week,
Yeah.
maybe it's when I'm in this type of setting, maybe it's with this team. But what can you challenge yourself to think about? Where can I start celebrating and starting small?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want some accountability to that, we do have our technical leader boot camp starting on January 26th, which we're
Uh-huh.
super excited about.
Yeah,
And
we are.
like Jill said, this is a part of our modules, this is a part of our discussion.
Mhm.
And we will hold you accountable. Your group will hold you accountable to the habit of celebration and how often you are celebrating yourself and your teammates.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I just put up our email. So if you've got questions about it or check out our website, but grab a seat. Or if you know someone, you're like, you know what, we want to help them build and develop the leadership skills to be successful in technical roles. That's us. That's what we do.
That's what we do. That's what we love to do.
That is what we love to do. That is what we have uniquely put together for technical leaders. These
Absolutely.
coaching based programs.
And we know that it works, right? We know that it works. We know that this is what it takes to have a successful
Mhm.
food safety culture.
Mhm.
So email us.
Absolutely.
And
So
then
we
next
hope.
week, which we kind of talked about a little bit
Mhm.
earlier, because we're going to be in celebration mood all month. Just talk with us, right? Because we're going to be celebrating our anniversary month,
Mhm.
and that's what we're talking about next week, right?
Yes, we are. Yeah. And so join us because, we're going to talk about this journey where we transitioned from working in manufacturing at different types of facilities and companies to being a woman owned small business that's here solely to support you and
Yes.
your teams and the the unique development that we need as technical leaders.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That we needed, right, when we were going through manufacturing and retail organizations. So we're excited about that. We're excited that you're here this week and every week on Real Talk Food Safety on Wednesdays, LinkedIn Live, noon Eastern Standard Time. And then if you are listening from our replays, you know we are on YouTube as well.
Absolutely. So thanks for being here. We loved having you be with us, and we appreciate that you bring others along too.
Yes. We will see you next week. Bye.